Welcome to Foodytime. I'm Jay Fettigan, and this is my Summertime episode, part 1. I begin by talking with Jonathon Alsop about Vinho Verde, then Gordon Edgar about cheeses of summer, and then finally Charles Coe tells a great, funny, enjoyable story about his days as a teenager working in a Dairy Queen. Enjoy. Well, John, thanks for taking part in this summer episode of Foodytime. What are your thoughts on summer and wine and other cocktails and hard seltzers and all the other things out there that are available?
Well, what we see in general just across the food world is that our appetites in food change from season to season. Part of it's about what's available during that season. Part of it's just that, a raspberry lime Ricky in February, just so wrong. But exactly the same thing in July is heaven. So we see this across all kinds of foods, and not too surprisingly, we see this with wine as well. Some wines seem to be just made for summer. One of my favorites, and something that I really recommend to people a lot, is a Portuguese white wine called Vinho Verde, which literally means green wine. So this is a wine. This is also a geographical region in northern Portugal called Vinho Verde, and it's a super light, very vivid white wine, low in alcohol. A little lower in alcohol, usually like in the 9%, 10% range, which is great for summer. And also has, although you wouldn't call it a sparkling wine, it doesn't have as much carbonation as a champagne or Prosecco or anything like that. There is a little CO2 in there, so it is a little bit fizzy. Right.
That's exactly the word that how I would describe it too. It's like, it's not carbonated like a seltzer or something, but there's just a little touch of effervescence at which makes it really pleasant.
And it's super affordable. My favorite, there are a ton of them out there, and they're all absolutely worth trying. They're all kind of in the $10 orbit. And my favorite is a winery called Aveleda. And one of the things, even though you might find it to be sort of a simple white wine and a cheap white wine, the things that makes it interesting is that it's blended sometimes from 4 or 5 different white grapes. The most common one we know from Spanish winemaking that's very famous is Albarino. This part of Portugal where Vinho Verde is made is just right over this arbitrary political border from the part of Spain that's famous for Albarino. The Portuguese call it Alvarinho. And then other white grapes that no one's ever heard of. Arento, Trejadura, white grapes that are almost exclusively used in this blend, so you would never really learn the names of those grapes.
And grapes that are particular to that region or that area of the world?
Yes, exactly. These are indigenous Portuguese white grapes, and some of them are grown a little bit in other parts of the world, but not really. So in addition to being low in alcohol, nice and fizzy, super affordable, it's a really, really interesting white wine.
And what type of a meal would you serve? What would you serve it with? I mean, I know that a lot of people serve it as just a cheese and crackers kind of a wine, but is it is there a food that you would pair with it, or would you go with something else for the meal?
Well, so in terms of food, this is a wine that you can drink alone. And I don't mean like alone and sad, the shades drawn. I mean, this is wine that you could enjoy without food.
Yes.
But it's very, very, even though the alcohol is a little bit higher than what we think of in traditional beers, For me, this Vinho Verde is the wine that is most like beer. So any type of, I see this with like simple grilled food. I see this with pizza. Again, great with seafood. This is a big all of Portugal is a huge seafood cuisine country. Yes. So it's great with seafood, and it's very. So is type O the universal donor?
I think so. Yeah, it's a blood type.
I think it is. Yeah. So this would be in the wine world. This would be sort of a type O. We'll go with almost anything except the strongest flavored cheeses, except the not with lamb, not with venison.
Right.
Not with bear or badger.
Yes, but what wine would you pair with badger? I hate to say, but would it come from your homeland, from Ohio or something? I don't know. Would they?
I don't know what. I don't even really know where that came from. So, not with you. It's not going to work with really, really extreme flavors.
Sure, or roadkill, I guess too.
Which is legal actually within the last few years in Kentucky. You can now legally harvest roadkill, which before apparently was illegal.
I bet that's a pairing recommendation you've never gotten.
Roadkill Reserve.
Sorry, we got way off topic there.
Hang on. I have to write that down and start working on the label design for that. Well, summertime is roadkill season in a lot of places.
Exactly.
Back to planet Earth.
So Vinho Verde, that's a great suggestion, and as you said, it goes with just about anything, or just open up a bottle with some friends and sit out back. Yeah,
absolutely.
John always has a lot of interesting things to say, and in the Summertime episode part 2, he talks about Proseccos and Cava, mixed drinks in cans, and hard seltzers, a lot of other things. Pretty interesting, so tune in for that. Up next is Gordon Edgar, a cheesemonger from San Francisco, who talks about some of his favorite cheeses for the summer. Enjoy. What do you think are the best cheeses for summer?
Well, first thing is mozzarella, fresh mozzarella. It's like when tomatoes are in season, I mean, this is the obvious choice, but we literally sell 10 times as much fresh mozzarella in our tomato months than we do the rest of the year. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, it's like, instead of doing 2 cases at a time, we're doing 10 cases at a time. It's a real thing, tomatoes, basil, olive oil. I mean, it's a perfect summer dinner, I would also say, other great cheeses like that are also Italian style, they just tend to work well with that, which are Crescenza and, as I've said before, my favorite cheese, Teleme, great summer cheeses, go with all the summer fruits and vegetables. It's it's salad time too, so a lot of good fetas, feta and salad's perfect. Goat cheese and salad is perfect. The fresh cheeses. It's the winter months. You want the aged cheeses, the stinky cheeses. Those are what comfort you. The heavy fats, in winter. In summer, you want the light ones, the less aged ones. And so I think as a rule of thumb, summer, the less aged cheese, the better. I mean, at least for your picnics. If you're at home and you're air conditioned, yeah, man, have a raclette, have a have a big melty cheese, whatever. But if you're eating outside, keep it young. That sounded, I don't know if that sounded right. Long cheese.
I think we got it. I think I understood. I think I understood where you were going. I believe.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
All right. Thanks, Jay. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too. Thanks a lot. Bye. Well, Gordon got a little flustered there at the end, but I think we all know what he was talking about. Next is the poet and author Charles Coe, sharing a funny, charming story about working in a Dairy Queen as a teenager. Enjoy. Well, Charles, thanks for joining on the Foodytime Summer Show. I'm really eager to hear your story and tell us about your tales of summer.
Thanks for inviting me. This is a little tale of my teenage years. This is Confessions of a Dairy Queen. Imagine yourself on a hot night pulling onto the parking lot of a Dairy Queen in Indianapolis, Indiana, in the summer of 1969. Imagine you spent all afternoon washing and waxing your father's car, shining the chrome, and now as you cruise onto the lot watching streetlights glint on the polished hood, you feel like the star of your own movie. Everything seems possible tonight. It's all there, right in your hand, as close and real as your steering wheel. The place is hopping. Cars looking to park cruise the lot like sharks, swimming slow circles in search of dinner. But just as you finish your first lap, a car pulls out of a space right in front of the window. So you slide in, 3 beats ahead of some guy in a white Camaro. You kill the engine and sit for a moment, listening to the end of a song on the radio. It's Marvin Gaye, all tangled up in the grapevine. You look across the seat at your girl. She's smiling, eyes closed, lightly tapping the dashboard like a set of bongo drums, mouthing the words, but not singing out loud because she's self-conscious about her voice. You like her voice just fine, but for some reason, you maybe can't explain, you also like that she's a little shy about it. When the echoes of Marvin's plea fade, you take out your wallet and hand her a $5, and she gets out and walks up to the window. All the girls are at the window. All the boys sitting behind the wheel, radios on, young lords of the universe, checking out each other's cars, each other's girls. The guy next to you is in your homeroom and you catch his eye. He glances at your girl, looks back at you and nods, flashes a grin and a thumbs up. You return his grin, then lean back against the headrest to breathe in the smell of hot dogs and the traces of your girl's perfume. It's mid-July. Summer's really just getting cranked up. Next weekend, you and your pop are headed for the lake to try your luck at bream and catfish. You'll take an iron skillet and toss some cornmeal and milk in the cooler next to the root beers. And when you catch some fish, and you almost always catch fish, you'll clean a few, roll them in cornmeal, and cook them in bacon fat right there on the bank. And week after next, you and the guys are taking your first road trip, driving down to Cincinnati to catch a Reds game. Watch Pete Rose and Johnny Bench duke it out with the Cubs. And right now you're watching your girl at the counter, and when she gets back, you'll drink your chocolate malted and eat your chili cheese dog. No onions today. With the windows down and the radio on, and after that you'll just drive around. No place in particular to go. Maybe across the White River Bridge. Find a quiet little spot to pull over near Riverside Park and talk for a while. Maybe neck a little, making sure not to push your luck, and listen to the crickets. On hot summer nights at the Dairy Queen, I was right in the middle of the action. But I wasn't there in a nice car, with a girl strolling up to the counter to buy my ice cream cone. I was a wallflower in high school, the guy making the cone. The guy behind the window in the geeky little short sleeve polyester shirt with clip-on bow tie and paper hat. For 3 summers, I'd worked at the Dairy Queen next to my high school. For 3 summers, I explored the mysteries of slush and strove to make the perfect malts and milkshakes and dipped cones. My bosses were Don and Sandy Cherry, the married couple that owned the franchise. In a way, they probably ruined my life. By that I mean they gave me an unrealistic sense of what you could reasonably expect from an employer. When they showed you how to do some part of the job, they patiently explained what they wanted until they were sure you understood. If you messed up, they pulled you aside and told you quietly and calmly what you'd done wrong, how to fix the mess, and how to handle it next time. And when you did something well, they mentioned it in front of everybody. And they never charged us for food. They figured the cost of a few kids' lunches wasn't going to put them out of business. They just expected us not to overdo it, and we didn't. And they never had to tell us, don't feed your friends when you're not here. Because they trusted us, we were trustworthy. Imagine that. I was never more impressed by their patience than on the day of the great slush disaster of 1969. Briefly, this is what went down. This was my second summer on the job, and I was trusted with a great responsibility, coming in alone on Sunday mornings to do the opening prep, to make sure that everything that needed to be filled was filled, to note what supplies needed to be ordered, to reassemble the innards of the ice cream machine, which is taken apart and cleaned each night at closing time. On those Sundays, I gave George Jones and Tammy Wynette the morning off and turned the radio over to Wilson Pickett and Jimi Hendrix. I also had to check the slush bucket and refill it when it got low. You probably all have slush or Slurpee or Freezy, depending on what part of the country you're from. It's a fruit-flavored drink made up of tiny ice crystals. It's the quickest route known to a brain freeze for the careless slurper. In those days, the plain slush mix, basically sugar water with thickening agents added, sat in a tub out back in the walk-in cooler, and was pumped through tube to the machine in front, where it was quickly frozen and mixed with the delicious chemicals that imitated your chosen flavor. The bucket that held the plain mix was a white 50-gallon tub that rested on two large metal cans inside the walk-in. When the tub was nearly empty, I'd take it out of the cooler, pour the remaining mix into a smaller container, wash the tub, and set it back on the metal cans. Then I'd pour the remaining slush mix back into the tub. Next, I'd make more slush mix to fill the tub the rest of the way. I'd empty 2 10-pound bags of sugar into a bucket that was used only for this. Then pour in some warm tap water and stir until the sugar dissolved. Then I'd add a gallon jug of thickening agent. God knows what was in it. Pour all this into the slush bucket and top off with more tap water. But one particular Sunday, I'd gone through all these steps, and when almost finished, suddenly realized, to my horror, that I hadn't set the slush tub properly atop the metal cans. It was starting to tip over, and there was nothing I could do about it. I can still see it all in slow motion, like a gunfight in a Sam Peckinpah flick. 55 gallons of sugary goop flowing like the waters of a broken dam over the edge of the cooler and forming a 2-inch deep lake in the back room. I stood there for a minute, wondering if I was too young to run up and join the French Foreign Legion, and then sloshed over to the phone to call Don. After I described the situation, he was silent for a little while. Then he simply and calmly said, "We'll be there in a half hour." Thanks, Don and Sandy, for being such good sports and treating us kids like adults in training. They're both long gone, as is that Dairy Queen itself. No, weeds poke up through the asphalt where it once stood. And the teenagers who buzzed the joint on hot summer nights, bursting at the seams, so primed and ready for whatever was next, have laminated Medicare cards tucked away in our wallets. None of us knew what lay ahead, what mixture of sorrows and joys waited for each of us as we drove off that Dairy Queen lot for the last time at the end of that final carefree summer. But on those nights so long ago, it was enough to sit in your car knocking back the heat with a root beer float, with the windows down, your best girl sitting next to you, smelling like a flower garden. It was enough to have Dad's car and a tank full of cheap gas and Marvin Gaye on the radio. And this one perfect night stretched out before you, as bright and smooth as a ribbon of brand new highway.
Wow, Charles, I love your stories. I love your storytelling, but certainly something that I can relate to, and probably just about everybody else. Thank you so much, and thank you. We're both in summer shirts too for the.
We're rocking it.
Well, that was great. Thanks a lot, Charles.
It was my pleasure. It was my pleasure.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my summertime episode, part 1. Next time, you can tune in to part 2, where we hear more from Jonathon Alsop and a lot of other interesting people. Till then, this is Jay Fettigan. We'll see you next time on Foodytime.